culture is much more in your face. This is a very practical study. For any Christian who wants to live a victorious life in Christ, I am convinced that there is an abundant life that Christ came to give that we do not realize because we are overly anxious and concerned about the culture and concerned about this and not concerned about the things of God. So I just want to do a quick review on salvation because this is going to come up. So according to Pauline theology, which is what our church follows, Calvinist theology, salvation has really three aspects: justification, sanctification, and glorification. You find that in Romans. Justification is the work of God. It's where you are, we would call it, especially in the Baptist church, saved. I have made a profession, I walked down the aisle, and now I am a Christian. Well, I was looking at our statement of faith last night, which is really, really good, by the way, if you want to know what this church believes. Justification is completely a work of God. It is God reconciling you to himself through the finished work, through your belief in the finished work on the cross, and that belief comes through the grace of God. So you don't do anything. You are made a Christian. You are made a justified Christian. And I want to make, because that's going to, some of the passages in Hebrews, we're going to drift into this idea of eternal security and assurance of salvation. Can you lose your salvation? Hebrews is going to make you think. Our goal, by the way, just so you know, for adult Bible study, is not to spoon feed you everything. It's to spark your interests so that you go and seek things out. And during this study, there may be some questions that you just go, well, I thought, but you said. So you have a group of elders, present company excluded, that are really, really talented men in the scriptures. You have other men that are not talented. You have women that are very talented in the scriptures. If you want to meet with somebody, let one of us know. If you want to meet individually, some of you and some of your cohorts have questions, we'd love to work through some things with you. So, back to our review. Justification, that's the process. That's the you are made right with God. Then there's sanctification. Then on the other end, there's glorification. That's when Jesus returns. We're going to rise. Those who are true believers are going to rise, and we will be given glorified bodies. Again, I do nothing about that. I don't know when he's coming. I don't know how it's going to really look. I got some texts that kind of tell me. I don't know what the glorified body's going to look. I don't know any of that. But that's going to happen to me. Justification happens to me and for me. Glorification happens to me and for me. But in the middle, there's sanctification. There's that time period between when you realize you belong to the Lord and you die. That's what I believe Hebrews is talking about. Even the elders don't all have the exact same opinion, and so this is going to be a great study because you're going to get to hear from some different points of view. Now, I believe that, and only you can know this if you're a Christian, if you believe, and only you can know that. I can't know that for you. I'm pretty sure I know you're all Christians, but I can't know that for sure. But if you believe, we at this church, and I can support it biblically, believe that you cannot lose your salvation. You will go to heaven. Now, and you can know that now. You don't have to wait till the end. There's a school of theology that says, kind of says that if you don't have works, you may not be a true Christian. Well, that's just work salvation on the back end. So that means I have to wait until I die and hope. I believe Pope John Paul, I believe I read that he, close to his death, he said that he hoped he had done enough to get into heaven. No, we don't. If you know, if you believe Jesus came, lived, died, was buried, rose from the grave, that resurrection thing is so important. You're His, because the scriptures say you can't believe spiritual things unless you're spiritual. And if you're His, John 6 says you're His. Period. End of discussion. Okay, so now, but some of these passages you're going to go, interesting. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is what it means. This is out of 2 Timothy. Sorry for the typo. This is what we have kind of wanted to look at as as kind of a global thing. This is Paul's last words to Timothy. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. So that's what he has done. He has done. And we're going to see how he did it as we move through the study, but he has done this. Henceforth, therefore, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, Judgment Day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. Loved his appearing is a key part of this. That means to see him without guilt or shame. I can't wait till he comes. I'm not worried about. Yes, I'm a wretched sinner, and I've had to deal with a lot of that. But I know that when he comes, it's gone now, and it's always going to be gone. And when I see him, there will be no guilt and no shame. So, look at the verbs. I have fought, so that means there's a war. I have fought. I have finished. Right? Once you start something, you got to finish it. I have kept the faith. Guarded. Some translations say guarded. Guarded my faith. Guarded. That is it's a very active verb. And we have to realize that we are in a war. And I think sometimes that's part of our problem, is that we don't remember that we are in a spiritual battle against an enemy that wants to cause us as much suffering and ruin as possible, just because he wants to. It's evil for evil's sake. That's who we fight constantly. Paul says that. We do not fight against flesh and blood. We're fighting against powers we can't even begin to understand. So this is where we want to head, and I really hope our study is challenging, and that it causes you to think. So how am I doing? Because I've seen older Christians that they just kind of stop being Christians. They aren't unsaved, but they just kind of stop reading their Bible and stop going to church and stop fellowshipping, and all of a sudden they're just miserable. They're just miserable. And it's hard to watch. So anyway, all right. Hebrews, the first warning passage. We're going to be in Hebrews chapter 2. This is the first warning passage, and you'll see what I'm talking about when this bumps up against this idea of eternal assurance of salvation. So I want to set the stage. Let me just read this. Therefore, we're going to figure out what that therefore means. We must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. Closer attention. Not close, closer. Assuming the writer, whoever the writer is assuming you're paying some attention. You need to pay closer attention. For since the message declared by angels, I'm going to get to that, proved to be reliable, and every transgression or disobedience received a just retribution. Now we're introducing a new concept here. Retribution. How shall we escape what? We'll get to that. If we neglect such a great salvation. Does that mean I can choose to be saved, choose to be justified or not? We're going to talk about that. The stuff that came before, was declared at first by the Lord. It was attested to us by those who heard, while God also bore witness by signs and wonders and various miracles. and by gifts of the Holy Spirit distributed according to his will. What is he talking about? Must pay closer attention to what? So if you go up in the first chapter of Hebrews, this is how it starts. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, this is not going to be on the screen, God spoke to our fathers. He spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he's spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. He upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, that's key, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. That's what I believe he's talking about. Therefore, we must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. What have we heard? That Jesus is it. It's not law. It's not prophets. It's not song. It's Jesus is more excellent than anything. And I think one of the themes of the book of Hebrews is recognition that Jesus is Lord, and I mean Lord, 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 and the consequences for failing to do so. Because we can, and we know Christians, and when I'm going to use that word as true believers, who really love Jesus, but they don't consider him their Lord. They don't really look at him the way the writer of Hebrews talks about. He's the heir of all things, through whom God created the world. He's the radiance of the glory of God, the exact imprint of his nature, and Jesus upholds the universe by the word of his power. Words are huge. The spoken word is huge. And all that, the writer says in chapter 2, we've seen by signs and miracles and wonders. What is he talking about? Well, they're talking about they saw Jesus. They saw what he did, and they talked to him. So this idea that Jesus is supreme is not even a good word, because you can have a pizza that's supreme, right? So they don't really go together. We don't have words to describe his majesty and glory. That's what I think the writer of Hebrews is getting at. Some believe that this is talking mainly to people, probably Jews, who are trying to obtain salvation apart from Christ. Well, we're going to look at it as we're trying to obtain sanctification apart from Christ. That's the way I see the book of Hebrews, because we're not Jewish. You can have some very interesting discussions in this book. So, therefore, we must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. It being Jesus is supreme above everything. Because once you get that, then everything else starts to fall in place. If you try and put the law first, or the commandments, or all that kind of stuff first, you're still going to engage in works, and that's just very, very difficult. It's very difficult. It doesn't work. Hence, Jesus. If it worked, he would have stayed in heaven. But it didn't work, so he came down here. So what's the answer? So in this passage, the writer is saying you got to pay closer attention to what you've heard. Okay, so we've heard that in just these few sentences, Jesus is awesome. Now, go to Psalm 119. This is a way to really begin to understand who Christ is. 119, and this Psalm 119 is a 150-word psalm about the beauty of the written word, the beauty of the law. But it gives us the doctrine. Gives us the doctrine of revelation, not the book of Revelation, but revelation. And I think this is something that I really want you to think about. So we have God who's way up there, who's unlike anything we can even begin to imagine. And we have us way down here. So, how do we know about God? He reveals himself to us. He actually, I love this word, he condescends. Now, we use that word quite negatively. That was such a condescending remark. Like when somebody superior talks to somebody inferior. That's the way we see it, and we get offended, right? Well, I look at Retta when she's got 3-year-olds just, everywhere, and she's talking to them. She is condescending to them. She's not being mean. But she has to talk to them in a way that they can understand. Otherwise, she can't control them. They can't learn. They can't do anything. They're just going to run around and do whatever they do, right? So when Retta talks to, and I've seen it, get down on the ground and hold their little hands and look them in the eye. She's saying things that their little brains can understand. That's condescending. That's what the Lord does with us. He is superior. We are inferior. We have to see that. That's the doctrine of revelation, that God, and it gets even cooler than that. So you think about, I've asked this question before, how many languages does God know? All of them, right? He chose, first of all, to reveal himself to us. Second of all, in a language, one language, that his people could understand. And that he knew could be translated into other languages. He condescended. He got down on his knees and said, okay. And he held our little hands and he said, all right, I'm going to tell you about me as much as you can handle. Right? We think we can handle quite a bit. So, and I know this is tiny. Oh, well, it's tiny here. Okay. So how do we deal with neglect? First thing, I really want us to ponder the beauty of Revelation, not the book, but the doctrine. That the God of the universe condescended to speak to us after we did everything that we did, and after we do everything that we do. He still speaks to us, right? So Hebrews is talking about the glory of Jesus. Well, how do you know about the glory of Jesus? Well, you're going to have to look at the whole Bible. I mean, those statements, Jesus created the world, that's true. But there's so much more there. There's so much more about Christ and what he's done and who he is and why he is and who we are. You have to see all that. So, real quick, revelation is the way. I'm going to show you. Blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with their whole heart, and who do no wrong. Sin is a big deal. You have commanded your precepts to be kept diligently. That's true. Oh, that my ways may be steadfast in keeping your statutes. Then I shall not be put to shame. When Jesus comes back, I'm going to love his appearing because I've not been put to shame. How? I'm going to keep the law. Well, I can't do that on my own. Hold on. Having my eyes fixed on all your commandments, I will praise you with an upright heart when I learn your righteous rules. I will keep your statutes. Do not utterly forsake me. Isn't that interesting? Why would he utterly forsake me? Because I don't keep his statutes. So the question then becomes, well, how do I keep these? Okay, so how many of you know how to ride a bicycle? If I ask you to write down all the steps that it takes to ride a bicycle, how far would you get past putting one leg over and sitting down? You can't describe it, but you know how to do it. In your sleep, you can ride a bicycle. The way you learned is you started off with training wheels, and then at some point, your dad said, "We're taking the training wheels off." And you went, "But I can't do it." And he went, "Oh, yeah, you can, but I might fall." "Okay, you'll get back up." And then all of a sudden, and I remember when it happened with me, it's like, I'm doing this. I couldn't have told you how, but I'm doing it. It's practice. Practice, 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 because we can't do this on our own. We are the fruit. We are the branches. Jesus is the vine. And people say, "Well, how do I tap into that? How do I take advantage?" Well, first of all, are you really reading the Bible, right? Verse 9, how can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to your word. Are we in this? If we're gonna not neglect so great as salvation, I'm going to finish with that in just a second. We have to stay in the word. That's the remedy. So the first warning is we must pay. Go back to that slide, Mark. We must pay closer attention to what we've heard. All right. Well, this writer, he would be saying the whole thing. Right? He's only got a little bit right now, but the whole thing. How can we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? All right, does that mean that I can lose my salvation? No. He said every transgression or disobedience for Jesus received a just retribution. That's here. How do you want to live your life? When he's talking about salvation, you have to be very, very careful, because salvation in the New Testament is not a one-off. It's not compartmentalized. It began before the foundation of the world, and it will never end. We're in a process. It's like marriage. One day, I was not married. The next day, I went through a ceremony and got a ring, and I was married. And I am working on my marriage, and I will be working on my marriage until one of us dies. But just because I'm working on my marriage doesn't mean I'm going to get remarried every day. It's the same thing here. If you want the life that Christ came to give, here's the first warning, and he's right off the bat. Pay close attention. Go back to the Revelation slide. Close attention to what you've heard, because we can neglect. He's putting out there, you can neglect such great a salvation. And here's the last thing I want to say about this. Until you are, we've been, I think a lot about homeless and addicts and things like that in my own life. Until you're willing, until you're ready to admit without reservation that you are powerless against sin and it can destroy your life, you're not going to want to take advantage of what the Holy Spirit gives you, because you're still going to be working on it. I think that's what part of what's going on with the Hebrews that are being written to. They're still trying to work it out themselves, and it just doesn't happen. But you have to get to a point where you say, I can't do this, and mean it. I used to teach a class. It's if you ever want to know more about that, if you've ever been to AA or any one of those, the first thing you start off talking about is, "Hi, my name is Bobby. I'm an alcoholic. I realize that I'm powerless over alcohol, and it has ruined my life." Okay, this powerlessness. Well, we change that. I am powerless over sin, and it is ruining my life, because that encompasses everyone. So you have to get to that point first. All right, now. So our goal, next slide. This is the first part. This is the first part of what Paul, so when Paul says about finishing well, and this is the part that's tough for us. I'm being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. Poured out, that's the key. I'm being poured out. Well, who wants to be poured out? He's being used however God wants him to be used. So he says, "For I am being poured out as a drink offering." I have fought the good fight, finished the race, I've kept the faith. He has sacrificed everything. I mean, if you don't know if you know in the Old Testament, it's good to know your Old Testament. Drink offerings filled up a glass with wine, and they poured it out on the altar. Just nobody drank it. It was given to God. You could say it was wasted, but it wasn't. So I want us to get to the questions. These are our first series of questions. What are the natural benefits to us of Jesus' finished work on the cross? Have you ever really considered that? Natural or supernatural benefits. Is your victorious sanctification a guarantee? I want you to think about that. You have to think about that all week. Is your victorious sanctification a guarantee? Your justification is, if you're a true believer, your justification is guaranteed. It's done. Your glorification is guaranteed. Is your victorious sanctification a guarantee? Can a true believer fall away and suffer consequences? And are you preparing to finish well? If so, how? And that's the question we're going to be asking throughout all of this. Are you preparing to finish well? And if so, how? Jump on it.